Once Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the stage, it was clear that this was no ordinary moment. Known for her candidness and unflinching demeanor, she wasn't someone who shied away from speaking her mind, no matter the consequences. But even by her standards, what she said about Robert De Niro was unexpected, shocking, and downright explosive. The crowd had barely settled when she took a deep breath, gathered her thoughts, and aimed her words straight at the Hollywood legend. It wasn't just a passing remark or a subtle jab. Karoline's words were sharp, pointed, and delivered with a precision that would leave anyone, even De Niro himself, reeling. To understand the gravity of the situation, we have to backtrack a bit. Karoline Leavitt, a rising star known for her blunt and sometimes controversial takes, had been in the public eye for a while. She wasn't just a politician or public figure, she was a firebrand who wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers. Whether you agreed with her views or not, one thing was undeniable. Karoline was not afraid to speak her truth. And when she did, it often left people questioning the status quo. Now, why Robert De Niro? What could possibly provoke such an intense reaction from someone like Karoline, who has made her name as a force to be reckoned with in political circles? Robert De Niro, one of Hollywood's most iconic actors, has long been known for his outspoken political views. A vocal critic of various political figures, including the former President De Niro, has used his platform to make strong statements about the world around him, but his opinions weren't always universally accepted. In fact, they often sparked debates, heated discussions, and sometimes even resentment from those who disagreed with his views. Karoline had long been critical of celebrities who used their influence to push political agendas. She had made no secret of her disdain for actors and entertainers who, in her opinion, had little understanding of the issues they were so quick to criticize. She argued that while celebrities like De Niro enjoyed their lavish lifestyles, they were out of touch with the struggles faced by everyday Americans. For Karoline, this wasn't just about disagreeing with a celebrity's politics. It was about the hypocrisy she saw in their actions and words. And so, when Karoline had the opportunity to address the public about Robert De Niro, she seized it. With a microphone in hand and a crowd hanging on her every word, she didn't mince words. The moment she unleashed her thoughts on De Niro, it was as if the room shifted. People leaned in, some in shock, others in anticipation, knowing that whatever she was about to say would make waves. Robert De Niro, Karoline began, her voice steady and firm, has built a career on playing tough, no-nonsense characters. But when it comes to the real world, it's clear he's a different kind of tough. The kind that's so out of touch with the average American that he can't even see the hypocrisy in his own actions. She paused for a moment, letting the words sink in before continuing. You know, I've never been one to shy away from speaking my mind. And I'll say this, De Niro likes to pretend that he's fighting for the common man, that he's some sort of champion of the working class. But let's take a closer look at the reality. This is a man who lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion, who flies around in private jets and who spends his days rubbing elbows with other rich elites. And yet, he has the nerve to lecture us about what's wrong with the country. Karoline's words were cutting, and it was clear that she had no intention of backing down. But that's not even the worst part, she continued. The worst part is that people like De Niro use their fame as a shield, as a way to hide behind their celebrity status and avoid any real accountability. They act like they have all the answers, but when it comes to actually doing something about the issues they claim to care about, they're nowhere to be found. The crowd was silent. Karoline's words had struck a chord, and it was clear that many of them were beginning to question the image of De Niro they had held for so long. What Karoline said, one observer later noted, wasn't just a critique of De Niro's political views. It was a call to action. It was a reminder that celebrities, no matter how famous, can't escape the scrutiny of the people they claim to represent. Karoline wasn't just criticizing De Niro as an actor or as a person. She was challenging the very foundation of celebrity culture. She was questioning the notion that celebrities, because of their fame, should have a louder voice in political discussions than the average American. She wasn't advocating for censorship. Rather, she was calling for a more balanced and grounded approach to political discourse, one that included the voices of those who didn't live in mansions or fly private jets. "I'm not saying that celebrities don't have the right to speak their minds," Karoline explained, "but I am saying that when they do, they should be held accountable for the consequences of their words. They can't just hide behind their status and expect to be taken seriously. If De Niro really wants to be a champion for the people, then he needs to stop living in a bubble and start listening to the people he claims to represent." The impact of Karoline's words was immediate. Social media lit up, with people across the political spectrum weighing in on the explosive moment. Some praised her for calling out the hypocrisy of Hollywood elites, while others criticized her for attacking De Niro personally. But what no one could deny was that Karoline had struck a nerve. She had taken on one of the biggest names in Hollywood, and she had done so without hesitation. In the days that followed, the controversy only grew. News outlets picked up on the story, and pundits weighed in from all sides. Some defended Karoline's position, agreeing that there was a disconnect between Hollywood's political activism and the realities faced by ordinary people. Others decried her remarks as unfair and uncalled for, accusing her of using De Niro as a political punching bag. But in the end, the debate continued, with Karoline's name at the center of it all. It wasn't just a story about a political figure taking on a celebrity. It was about the growing tension between the entertainment world and the political sphere. It was about the increasing frustration of people who felt that celebrities like De Niro were out of touch with the everyday struggles of ordinary Americans. And it was about the boldness of Karoline Leavitt, who refused to let the power of fame silence her voice. In the aftermath, Karoline's popularity surged. She gained a new wave of followers, many of whom saw her as a fearless leader unafraid to challenge the status quo. She had become a symbol of resistance to the entrenched power structures of both Hollywood and politics. But what about Robert De Niro? How did he respond to the barrage of criticism from Karoline and her supporters? Well, as expected, De Niro didn't take kindly to the attack. He's known for his sharp tongue and his tendency to fight back against critics. But despite the backlash, he remained relatively quiet, at least publicly. Some speculated that he was waiting for the right moment to respond, while others believed that he was simply taking the high road by not engaging with the controversy. Whatever the case may be, one thing was certain. Karoline Leavitt had made her mark. She had shown the world that she wasn't afraid to go after the biggest names in the entertainment industry, and in doing so, she had earned the respect of those who valued courage and conviction. As the dust settled, it was clear that this was a moment that would be remembered for years to come. Karoline had taken on Robert De Niro, and she had done so in a way that left no room for doubt. She was a force to be reckoned with. Whether you agree with her stance or not, it's hard to deny the significance of what happened. It was an explosive moment that had everyone talking. And when it comes to Karoline Leavitt, one thing is for sure. She will never back down from a challenge, no matter who's on the other side. As the controversy surrounding Karoline Leavitt's remarks about Robert De Niro continued to simmer, it became evident that this was more than just a fleeting public dispute. What began as a pointed critique of a Hollywood icon quickly morphed into a broader cultural conversation about celebrity influence in politics and the role that fame plays in shaping public discourse. In the weeks following the explosive moment, Karoline's critics and supporters alike turned their attention to the larger implications of her comments. Some hailed her as a champion of the common person, someone unafraid to call out the contradictions of those who often wield their celebrity to shape political outcomes. Others, however, argued that her attack on De Niro was a cheap shot, an opportunistic move designed to stir up controversy and gain attention. But Karoline didn't seem to mind the polarized reactions. In fact, she seemed to thrive off the scrutiny. Rather than back down or soften her stance, she doubled down, amplifying her message with every public appearance. Karoline's follow-up statements were just as sharp and deliberate as her initial remarks, and she made it clear that she wasn't just calling out De Niro, she was calling out a system that allowed celebrities to dominate political narratives, without being held accountable for their words or actions. "I've always said this," Karoline remarked in a subsequent interview. celebrity culture has far too much sway over our political conversations. It's one thing for actors and musicians to share their opinions. They're entitled to their views, just like anyone else. But it's another thing entirely when they use their platform to influence policy, to shape public opinion, without ever having to face the consequences of their influence. For Karoline, the issue wasn't about silencing celebrities. It was about holding them to the same standard that everyone else was held to. If someone with immense influence like De Niro was going to speak out about politics, Karoline argued, they needed to be prepared for the fallout when their words were challenged. She wasn't advocating for censorship or repression. What she wanted was accountability. De Niro can say whatever he wants, just like anyone else, Karoline asserted. But when he claims to speak for the working class, when he tells people what they should or shouldn't believe, he better be ready to answer for it. If he can't see the irony of a millionaire telling the average American how to think, then he's more out of touch than I thought. Karoline's words resonated with many, especially those who felt alienated by the growing influence of Hollywood in politics. She became the voice of a segment of the population that felt their concerns were being drowned out by the louder, more glamorous voices of the entertainment elite. In a way, Karoline had tapped into a broader dissatisfaction with the current state of politics, where celebrities often used their fame to push agendas that didn't seem to align with the realities faced by most people. But Karoline's statements weren't just aimed at De Niro. Her broader critique touched on the growing disconnect between Hollywood and Main Street America. She spoke out against the perception that fame somehow equaled expertise, that the opinions of actors, directors, and musicians held more weight simply because they were well known. For Karoline, this wasn't just a political debate. It was about returning power to the people who lived and worked outside the insulated world of celebrity. It wasn't long before other public figures began to weigh in on the issue, further fueling the fire. Some sided with Karoline, pointing out that the rise of celebrity-driven politics was creating a dangerous precedent where the opinions of the rich and famous were given undue influence in shaping public policy. Others, however, came to De Niro's defense, arguing that celebrities, like any other citizens, had a right to voice their opinions and advocate for what they believed in. The battle lines were drawn, and the conversation quickly escalated into a full-blown debate over the role of fame in politics. In the midst of all this, Karoline's popularity skyrocketed. She was featured in countless media outlets, with her statements being dissected and analyzed by pundits from all political affiliations. She was invited to speak on conservative talk shows, where she found a new audience that appreciated her no-nonsense attitude and willingness to challenge the Hollywood establishment. Karoline had, whether by design or accident, become a cultural lightning rod. The more she spoke, the more people became curious about her, and the more they wanted to hear what she would say next. Her social media following exploded, with thousands of new supporters rallying behind her cause. She had tapped into something visceral, something that many Americans felt but hadn't been able to articulate. A frustration with the dominance of celebrity culture in shaping political discourse. It wasn't just about De Niro, it was about the broader cultural forces at play that allowed figures like him to wield so much influence without any real accountability. Karoline had made the debate personal, and in doing so, she had positioned herself as a key figure in this new political conversation. But even as her star continued to rise, Karoline faced criticism from some of her own political allies. Some questioned whether it was worth it to continue targeting celebrities like De Niro, worried that her comments would alienate potential supporters who believed that the focus should remain on policy rather than personal attacks. But Karoline wasn't swayed by these concerns. To her, the battle wasn't just about policy, it was about the culture that shaped those policies. If Hollywood and the entertainment industry had become so deeply ingrained in the political process, then it was time to call out the hypocrisy. "I'm not going to back down because a few people are uncomfortable with my words," Karoline said in one interview. "This isn't about being liked, it's about speaking the truth. And the truth is that the political elite, whether in Hollywood or Washington, have lost touch with the rest of the country. They're not listening to the people, and they're not reflecting the concerns of the average American." Meanwhile, Robert De Niro remained largely silent in the face of the growing firestorm. While he had made a name for himself as a vocal critic of political figures he disagreed with, he didn't seem to be eager to engage in a direct confrontation with Karoline. Perhaps he recognized that giving her more attention would only fuel the fire. Perhaps, as some speculated, he simply didn't feel the need to dignify her comments with a response. Regardless of the reason, Karoline's words had landed, and De Niro's silence spoke volumes in its own way. But as the dust settled, the legacy of that explosive moment remained. Karoline Leavitt had set the stage for a new kind of political conversation, one where celebrities were no longer exempt from criticism, no longer untouchable. She had proven that it was possible to challenge the power structures of both Hollywood and Washington without backing down. Whether or not you agreed with her message, one thing was clear. Karoline had made her mark. In the end, the story of Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro wasn't just about a heated moment between two figures from different worlds. It was about the growing tension between the entertainment elite and the people who felt left behind. It was about the power of celebrity to shape our political landscape, and the consequences of that power when it goes unchecked. Karoline Leavitt had sparked a fire. And while it may have started with a single moment, it had the potential to burn much brighter.